Welcome to Kathy on the Couch, your podcast for everyday clinicians who sit with grief, trauma, and the hardest human experiences every day. You weren't meant to carry this alone, and this is a space for therapists who hold space for others and sometimes need a place to be held too. I am Kathy, and I am your EMDR consultant trainer and thanatologist specializing in methods of death, dying, and bereavement. I created this podcast to support those who do the deep work, especially trauma and grief therapists and EMDR clinicians needing a soft place to land, who want real conversations, meaningful support, and a community where the hard questions are finally welcome. It's by therapists for therapists, where you find a monthly consultation group. You'll find a monthly NBCC CE training. You'll get access to a course module and resource kits. We're so happy to have you in one place, and you don't have to go looking for all those items in all the places. You can just come here. So we hold space for those who hold it all. That's our mission, where we talk honestly about all clinical challenges in the business of being a healer through curriculum development and training and breaking the silence to lead and thrive in the field without losing ourselves in the process. So, if you're looking to join for deeper connection, I invite you to join our membership community to help you learn and grow. Or if you're an EMDR therapist looking to be certified or a consultant, we have our program, EMDR University. Remember to give us a 5-star rating wherever you get your podcast. Now, let's get comfortable and let's head on over to the couch. 8 weeks ago, I asked a question that sounded like it belonged in a philosophy seminar rather than a continuing education context. It came from sitting with what I was doing with my program, EMDR University, consultation sessions with therapists, and a lot of conversations that happened along the way. So I began with what is an actual developmental consultation model that is adaptive and positive, and where does learning actually come from, and how do we create intentional CE webinars and consultation spaces that are neuroceptive and safe. And that's just as important as the content itself. So as we discussed this, we looked at what was happening in our training rooms. Where does learning actually come from? Not where do we hope it comes from, not what we tell ourselves is happening in our rooms, or maybe that we hope is happening, but where does the actual transformation, the kind of change that changes not only the clinician, but the recipient, the kind that changes what a clinician does on that Monday morning after the training. So here I want to close with something that I've been thinking about a while. The field of grief-informed and trauma-informed clinical training is not fully built. They're intersecting each other. There's been in parallel universes. I'm developing an integration between EMDR tradition and a thanatology tradition, and I'm bridging a gap that's not complete. We're looking at a research base that's growing slowly and carefully with the kind of rigor that will actually hold up, and it's still early, and we're honoring all of the traditions, and the people who are going to build it are the clinicians who are already doing the work. The ones who are sitting with the bereaved clients and asking harder questions than the models that we have give us a language for, including myself. And the ones who are bringing EMDR into grief work and wondering, what are these existing protocols miss? Or frankly, what is the protocol? The ones who are designing training and supervision and consultation with the real weight of our responsibility have a commitment to these questions. This is who the series is for and who I'm building this work alongside. And if that's you, I want to tell you about two things. The first is the Kathy on the Couch community. It's where our conversation continues with monthly CE, consultation, and a professional community of clinicians who are doing this thinking seriously and want company, they do it. If the series raises questions you want to keep working, that's where we keep working on them. And you can get your consultation, your CE, everything in one monthly subscription. We also are going to have various thought leaders in the field available for a monthly Q&A for members of the community. And we are going to have Stacy Ruse from PESI and Stephanie Pierce, who works in thanatology and maternal mental health, is our first two guests, and look for those in June and July. Our pilot study launches May 21st. We're going to have several cohorts. If you have an agency or people that you think would be interested, feel free to email Kathy at rewired360.com and we can get you set up. We're so excited to give clinicians language and territory about grief work that have been left unnamed. And the pilot cohort is a small study by design, but the research is real. And the clinicians who come through this first cohort are going to be part of shaping what the framework becomes. I hope you'll join. If you've been sitting with bereaved clients and feeling the edges of what existing models can hold, this was built for that moment. And links for both are in the show notes. And we will call this a wrap on the Pedagogical Roots series. It's live on the Rewired 360 blog. Share with a colleague, a trainer. And this has been so fun. Look for this, look through the grief map. And I am on Reddit, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Reddit is under the grief map. LinkedIn is Kathy Couch at Rewired 360, Facebook, and TikTok. I haven't really got with Instagram quite yet. I'm trying to still feel that out, but those are the main ones now. And this has been episode 11 of our Rewired 360 podcast. 8 weeks ago, I asked where learning came from. I think it comes from the same place everything else in this work comes from, being genuinely held and curious as a clinician, for having our full humanity treated as information rather than an obstacle, from being in a relationship with an idea, with a practice, with another person that makes the risk of not knowing feel survivable. So this is what good pedagogy does. This is what good clinical work does. And that's what I hope this series in some small way did for you. Thanks for being here. Until next time, take care. Where does it all actually originate? These are questions I sat with. I hope that you've answered. I'm using them in my EMDR University consultation and training programs as a developmental consultation framework. And through all this, we looked at polyvagal theory, the launch of my grief map pilot study. It's just been busy over here, y'all. And I think it's just really been important. All of these things came together: the grief map, developmental consultation framework, Porges, the adaptive yearning model. They came all in the last 4 months, and it's been really crazy, but really fun. It's now dying down. And the pilot study launches in, it's the May 4th. So it launches in on the 21st, the 17 days. And so I'm so excited. It's been something that I've really wanted to do ever since I was in graduate school at the University of Michigan, literally 21 years ago. And I'm so happy to have that coming. I'm happy to have this developmental consultation framework done. And I'm really excited that I have a clean answer, a more clear answer than when I started this series on training and developmental consultation. I don't have a perfectly clean one, but I have a much sharper conceptualization and argument. The way we design learning spaces is a clinical and ethical act. It's not a logistical one. I think that could be the title of a really relevant CE course, Developing Trainings with Ethics. And I'm really excited to have you here. Welcome to the Rewired 360 Kathy on the Couch podcast. I'm Kathy Couch, your fellow in thanatology, your EMDR consultant and trainer, and the founder of Rewired 360. This is episode 11. It's the series wrap for a Pedagogical Roots series. I've loved this series. It makes me feel so good that I can really conceptualize Vygotsky, Frere, Hooks, Simon Sinek. I know I'm missing some, but all of those really important people that have given this framework, this foundation into what it is. If you're just finding us, the series is live. Start with post 0. The link is in the show notes. Everything I'm going to say today will make more sense if you have the full arc. And please go back and listen. Make sure you give it a review on wherever you get your podcast so we can continue this fabulous content. If you're here because you followed the whole thing, I just want to say thank you. If you have followed the whole thing, let me know. Just send me an email and I'd be happy to give you a free prize. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but I'm happy to give you a free prize for your commitment and dedication. I believe in ongoing education, reciprocity, and give and take, and giving value to people that value me. So thank you. If you're here at the beginning, I really appreciate that. And we're at the beginning of something very magical. And here's what comes next. Let me walk back through what we actually built across these 7 posts, because I want you to hear the arc, not the individual theorists. The argument underneath all of them. We started with Frere, and Frere's core claim was not just that the banking model of education is ineffective. It's something that I've talked a lot with about my consultees, this deposit model of learning. It was that it's very disturbing when we treat learners as empty vessels. It is ineffective. People's whose job it is to receive and store what the expert deposits. We're communicating something about whose knowledge matters. And I want you to really think about that. Are you subscribing to trainings where you also matter, not just as a consumer, but as a co regulatory neuroceptive experience? Or are we just depositing information, rhetoric, theory, numbers? What's going to keep you engaged? What's going to keep you in that room to get this training that actually transforms yourself and other people? And that's for clinicians who are supposed to be working with traumatized people, with grievers, with nervous systems that have been learned to go quiet in the presence of power. Modeling that exact dynamic in our training rooms is, I would argue, a form of clinical ethical responsibility. When we fail to do that, it's ethical incoherence, it's lack of intention. And that intention is really what drives our work to be intentionally framed. Dewey gave us the embodied and experiential argument. Learning is not passive reception, it is active construction. It requires doing, reflecting, connecting, new experience and frameworks, and it's state dependent, meaning it requires a nervous system that feels safe enough to take on something new. We can't deposit learning into dysregulated nervous systems or nervous systems that are worried about how they're going to be received in the room. I told you a story about a consultee who was neurodivergent. She was in a training space and she had to repeat what the trainer was saying so she could hear auditorily back to her, and he publicly shamed her for interrupting and cross talking. Not cool, y'all. We really need to create those embodied spaces. I actually asked a trainer a question in one of my initial trainings, and she publicly shamed me, saying that it was inappropriate for someone to ask the presenter a question in the middle of delivery of content. And it wasn't that it was in a inopportune time, it was in a time where questions were welcomed, but I didn't understand what was going on. And she wanted to continue to build that construct when we didn't have the full foundation and didn't want to hear that feedback. And so publicly shamed me. Not cool. And when we think about this relationship, the more knowledgeable other, we are able to build relational attunement through scaffolding that's calibrated to where people are. I just had this conversation with a consultee this morning. You guys are coming into consultation with a ton of experience, more than I could ever have myself. And for me to think that, yeah, I know a few things, I know EMDR and grief and some things, but for me to think that I'm an expert and I can talk down to you and you have a lot of experience coming into the room is just totally not where we want to go with this. And so we're really honoring your training and education as you come into my spaces. You're teaching me and influencing me, and I'm influencing you. And that doesn't mean that I'm not presenting content that's accurate and delivered in a way that's sequential. It means that I'm allowing you to also bring what you have to it because then we evolve and develop. And that's where we're introducing consultation where they are rather than where we wish they were. There's a lot of anxiety about imposter syndrome. Am I doing this correct? There's so much material out there. I have in my rubric that allows us to have a conversation about what training they've had, where they're at, and where they can go from it. And so that's so important when we're talking about their developmental progress. I can teach them the next step. Maybe they have never even presented on a case presentation form, or maybe they have a lot. And so then I give them these tools to be able to help them conceptualize and build skill, regardless of whether I record it in video or audio. We need to really go with how are they feeling in the room about demonstrating those skills. So when done poorly, we're in a banking model work with a clinical credential. Montessori gave us the design principle, prepare the environment, trust the learner, like I explained today, bring them into the room. Do they gravitate to the paints? Do they gravitate to the sand tray? Do they gravitate to the couch? Meet them where they are. That's the rubric. That's where I'm like, here's the paints, you draw me what you think, and then we'll go from there and redesign. But the art is yours. The art is the therapist. They are the instrument, the human bond. My instructor, and if you're listening, Jim Palmer from the College of Southern Idaho, taught me this, that we are the instrument. I learned this in the human services field way back in 2001. 9/11 had just happened. We were practicing group interviewing, group interventions. And he really candidly said to us, "We are the instrument. You are the instrument. The medical field has tools. We are that instrument." That's the first time I've heard that in the neuroceptive space. I didn't hear that at the University of Michigan. I didn't hear that in my undergraduate. I heard that there in a room with technical training from a community college. So don't think that because we're in an institution with this supposed rigor, that we can discount other learning spaces. That's really important. I learned a ton, and also there's lots of valuable material in other spaces. So when we think about these, we're looking at the clinician who can tolerate learners' uncertainty long enough to let them sit in it. We let them work through it, rather than doing for and doing with the learner, not for the learner. Bell Hooks gave us a relational and political accountability that others often left undernamed. She asked whose bodies welcome in the room, whose full humanity, including their history, their rage, their grief, is allowed to be information rather than disruption. And she said that the teacher's own willingness to be vulnerable, to be present as a whole person than a credential is not a soft add on to good pedagogy. It is the pedagogy. I just love that. And thank you to her for everything that she so graciously left us with the field. He brought us the concepts, Simon Sinek, of Orville and Wilbur Wright, and really told their story in a way that he described that they didn't have institutional sanction. They had the epistemology, and they had the idea, they had what they needed to enact, and they were a success. And that's a powerful story I tell my kids. I share that with them when they're struggling. I have a daughter who's in cheerleading, my boys are in sports. It's about the struggle and the effort, not the outcome. And even when you're up against really difficult systems. And so, what I love about the Wright brothers is that they understood how knowledge was built. Thank you, Simon Sinek, for giving this vocabulary and platform, describing how they incrementally, empirically, through failure that was treated as data rather than humiliation. Samuel Pierpont Longley, he had money, he had prestige, the Smithsonian. The Wright brothers had a bicycle shop, okay? A genuine question and learning environment that allowed them to be wrong without it costing them their identity. Pierpont probably didn't have that. When he lost, he gave up the fight. They didn't. They kept going on. That kind of resilience is not built in institutions, it's built in relationships, it's built in bike shops, it's built with us sitting with those identity conflicts within us. And that is the through line from Frere to Dewey to Vygotsky to Montessori to Bell Hooks to Kitty Hawk. This is just the learning environments that actually produce transformation and share common architecture. They're designed to hold the whole learner, not just the competent performance of the learner. So, I want to say something directly about accessibility because I think it often gets treated as a compliance question rather than a clinical one. When we design a training that's not accessible, whether it's the subtitles, whether it's not accommodating neurodivergent learners, people with sensory differences, learning challenges, to people whose learning style does not match the format we're defaulted to, we're not just failing to accommodate, we're communicating something about who the training is designed for and the competence of therapists that are in the rooms. Those therapists are also building really important connections with their own populations. And the argument here is that's how we reach those populations is through those adaptations. And in a field where we're working with trauma and grief and clients who've spent years learning that their needs are inconvenient, that their presence is conditional, the design of our continuing education is modeling something. Every choice we make about pacing, structure, sensory load, processing time, and participation format is a communication. And that communication lands in the nervous system before the intellect. So, as we look through this, remember accessible teaching is not accommodation. It's not the extra step. It's what good pedagogy looks like when we take into account the full range of learning. And this is what I meant when I say it's an ethical act, because the alternative, the easiest path, the lecture heavy slide forward and hope model, does harm to no one, right? But it harms specific people in predictable ways in service of an implicit claim that the discomfort of the design is more burdensome than the discomfort of exclusion. I don't believe that. After 8 weeks of building this argument in public, I'm not interested in hedging a bet on it. But what it means for therapists on the ground is that if you're a clinician who trains, whether it's formal CE, supervision, consultation, licensure supervision, what does the series ask of you? What does it ask? Three things. First, start with the learner's nervous system. Help them feel safe, find out what they know, not the content outline, not the, TAP 21 as I was in substance abuse treatment clinical supervision manual. Before you build the curriculum, ask what state you need the learner to be in or the consultee or peer before they're able to take in what you can offer. Build that foundation, build their understanding, and then ask what your design does to support that neurosystem state, not assume it, support it. Second, treat your own uncertainty as a teaching tool. I don't know. That's something that I've thought a lot about, and that's a question that plagues me. I can think Brene Brown does this a lot in her conversations, sitting with it, treating uncertainty with pause, and an environment where we can both sort of be open to that. The theorists in this series, every single one, model intellectually humility as a feature, not a bug. Frere kept learning from his learners. Wrights kept revising. Bell hooks kept being vulnerable in the classroom, even when it was uncomfortable. And the clinician, as we present, is fully resolved. We're not teaching from mastery. We're managing anxiety when we're coming from that place. The learners feel that. Just sit with it. Let them know we don't know it all. Those are still questions for the field. That's where the juice is, especially as I'm getting into more research. They're designed for the full range, not the average learner, not the learner you remember being, the full range of people who will be in their room, sensory differences, trauma histories, relationships to authority, evaluation and performance, design in service at a full range of what you'll build. And something stronger can be developed than would if you have built it as we did. So the rubric informed consultation model is not just a framework, it's a pedagogical commitment made concrete. The developmental consultation framework is something I hold dear. You can find it in my EMDR University consulting program. And I just love talking about it. I'm so excited to launch this in June. The rubric anchored model I've been building and using and now has a name. It's coming forward in a more formalized way, and it's practical architecture underneath a theoretical argument. So I'll have more about that soon. And now we are looking at our grief map series, the thing that I've been so excited to tell you. And this is the companion to everything that we have built here. It's on the neurobiology of loss and trauma. It's the adaptive yearning model. It's the grief map pilot study. And we're giving clinicians a way to assess EMDR grief and loss targets within a taxonomy. You'll understand what that word means. I'm not going to say too much because we have pre and post data on this study, but it's a framework that bridges how to match thanatology or grief related traditions with EMDR and understanding what the CPTSD, or excuse me, the prolonged grief disorder diagnosis brings, and how do we diagnose it, and how do we know when yearning has become adaptive, and what it offers clinicians who are sitting with these kinds of questions. And we bring forth ideas of safety, neuroception, the way that we talk. So this is a territory I've been preparing for years, our research study and our CE framework. All of it's been pointing here. I hope that you'll join me. You can find the link in the show notes. I want to close with something that is not a pitch, but it is a way that we're looking at the grief and trauma-informed clinical training that hasn't been fully built yet. We have a lot of grief and trauma talk, but not a lot of communication between the lands. And what I've done in the Grief Map series is it's a pilot study, which is an integration between EMDR and thanatology, which is the study of death, dying, and bereavement. And we're looking at developing scientific rigor that helps them talk with the pilot study and give you real clinical application and tools you can use in the room with the client. The people who are going to build this framework are here listening and are already doing the work. The ones who are sitting with our bereaved clients and asking the harder question the models give them the language for. The ones who are bringing EMDR into grief work and wondering what target, what protocol, what did I miss? We're going to help you figure that out. We're going to help you understand when is yearning adaptive and when is it
the prolonged grief disorder criteria. How do we evaluate that? Also, we're going to help you understand who's in the room and how does our interaction create a sense of safety for the client to feel safe enough to process and find the stuck target. And this is who the series was for if you're listening. And it's what I'm building this work for alongside. And we're just so excited to be able to look for this grief map series. We will give you an overview of it. We can't go into the full training series on the podcast or the blog because it is a study, but we can give you an understanding of what the grief map is. If you have somebody that is in an agency or somebody that's stuck in grief, we would love for you to come to our training. It's 3-hour training once, and then 8 weeks later it's another 3-hour training as we're helping you implement the skills to work with EMDR and grief. So we're so excited to have that here. And I'm Kathy Couch. This has been episode of the Rewired 360 Kathy on the Couch podcast. We're so happy to have you here. 8 weeks ago, I asked where learning comes from. I think we've answered that. I hope we've answered that. And it comes from the same place everything else in this work comes from: being genuinely held, neurocepted, received, and from having our full humanity treated as information rather than an obstacle. And from being in a relationship with an idea, a practice, another person that makes the risk of not knowing feel survivable. So that's what good pedagogy does, and this is what good clinical work does. And it's what I hope that you've gained from this series, and in some small way, what we did together. So thanks for being here, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for joining us on another episode of Kathy on the Couch, the podcast for everyday clinicians. We hope today's conversation has inspired you, sparked new ideas, and offered you practical tools you can bring into your own practice, whether you're just starting out in the mental health field or you are a seasoned clinician. We're grateful to have you as part of our growing community, and Rewired 360 is here to companion you along your clinical career path. From the moment you begin your professional journey, we offer comprehensive support and resources that guide you at every stage. Our curriculum is designed to fill the gaps often found in the marketplace, providing advanced training, consultation, and mentorship as you progress in your journey. Visit us at the Kathy on the Couch community, the trauma community for clinicians, or the EMDR University community for EMDR clinicians. Be sure to check out our show notes for a full list of resources, and don't forget to visit our swag store at rewired360.shop. And this information shared on this podcast reflects perspectives and experiences of our guest hosts. It's not intended to substitute for professional consultation, supervision, or individual guidance. If you have questions about how to apply any of the concepts, we encourage you to consult with your clinical supervisor, consultant, or licensing board. As always, follow those research-based protocols and best practices in your work. We're here to walk alongside you as you deepen your clinical understanding. And until next time, keep connecting, keep learning, and keep rewiring for success. Take care.